So that's why we're worried.
I'm over here with you now. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We are truly looking forward to the presentations and the discussions that will follow with Arizona State University. We're planned to go till 1 o'clock, and I'll do my best to keep us on track to get us out of here no later than 6. That's my pledge. Before we get into the presentation from Arizona State, we left one area untouched yesterday, but it was so important we decided to give our student regents the opportunity to open the meeting today with a very brief and entertaining report. Regent DeGravina, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we do have a PowerPoint, but if not, it's no big deal. Oh, there it is. Great. We did promise a tap dance number, but I don't think we're going to be able to deliver that within a 1-minute period. So we'll do with a slideshow for this morning. So actually, I'm going to kick it off with Lauren. I think you're going to start us off this morning.
So we had a student leadership dinner on Wednesday evening. I'm going to go to the next slide. It was a great time to talk with some of our student leaders from NAU, ASU, and U of A about what they're doing on their campuses. You heard some of it yesterday, too, at the call to the audience. But just to touch on a few things, they're really focused on student wellness. So food insecurity is something that all 3 of the campuses seem to be really connected to. Their campus pantries, figuring out really what their campus looks like in terms of students that are food insecure and how we can best help. Mental health, which is something we heard a lot about yesterday, and I think the conversation can be elevated from there. Our student bodies are looking a lot at what they can do to support mental health and move the conversation from mental health awareness, because most people are aware at this point, to action. So how we can really take action on mental health and help in the best ways that we can. There's been really positive communication between the presidents of the universities and the student bodies, which is exciting to hear, as always. And then there's a lot of conversation around accessibility, and that's campus accessibility for all students, and making sure that we have the right things in the right places so everybody can get around and get into buildings and things like that. And then last, the importance of a connection between the students and their questions and how to get answers for them. So that's something that Andrea and I think you'll touch on in a second, is how we can make that connection for our student bodies.
Yeah, so some updates from, what Regent LaCure and I are up to. We are continuing our monthly phone calls with student leaders, which I think has been a really great movement in the right direction in efforts to increase the levels of communication with student leaders. That was something that they heard from us that they weren't hearing enough from us, so now I think they hear it very often from us. And so it's also a good way for us to understand what they're doing and get a better perspective of what students are thinking. There's only 2 of us, but there's a lot more of them. So utilizing the resources of getting student feedback is critical to get that through the student leaders. Regent LaCure and I had a really great meeting with Executive Director John Arnold, and we had great conversations regarding how does the student regent fit on the board. We're here for 2 years, and it's a fast turnaround, so how do we make the time that we're on the board most impactful? Also making sure that the students are at the forefront of all of our conversations at the board level, and also just making sure that we can be impactful. So we also discussed some initiatives that Regent LaCure and I would like to take on, developing what the student regent really is and furthering the manual. Last year, you may remember that Regent Carriega developed a really wonderful student regent manual, but there's some things in there that probably need to be furthered or better explained. So we're going to be taking that on to ensure that it's the best document to be passed down. We also want to explore how do we take the student concerns to the right people. So we're flooded with a lot of questions all the time, but those questions may not be the perspective of what a regent really does. So we're trying to find a balance of how do we take these student concerns and funnel them to the right person. So the next slide, which is some of the goals from the semester that we'd like to highlight, so you know what we're up to and what we're working towards, is still engaging with policymakers so that way we can put a student to the story, a face to the name, and that way we can provide our unique role as students to the policymakers and what it's like, you know, being a student in this modern day and age and how we can advocate best for the board. We're also looking towards campus safety discussions. That's a lot of the feedback of what we get is, you know, what are the options, what are students provided, what are the resources, looking at, you know, what the police department can offer students, ride services, and just getting an inventory of what's available to students. Also, we kind of put food insecurity on that. I mean, we just keep getting that every time we're at a student leadership meeting is, what are you all doing about food insecurity? What are you all doing about food insecurity? So, also, designing a system to funnel the questions. So Regent LaCure and I have been going back and forth of how do we create somewhat of an ombudsman program, like a student advocate. If they don't know where to go, they can go to this individual and they can get their needs and questions answered. So we're trying to develop some ideas around that so it doesn't have to just go to the student regent, but a lot of those questions are definitely university focused. So how we can best serve students when they have concerns. And so the last slide I'll leave for Lauren.
Ongoing projects that we have, we're still updating the student regent application process, making it one document, one strategic way that all three universities can go through the process of selecting. And then something to add, we're also still talking to all of the universities about what the Board of Regents is. We have a really great basic presentation that talks about what we do as a board and where our priorities are and our strategic goals. So I think it's been really helpful to go and talk to students about what that means for them and how it impacts them. So that's all that we have.
Thank you.
Any comments or questions from anyone around the table? Thank you. Your work is impactful and you add greatly to the conversation and bring a perspective that's very helpful to the rest of the board. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we'll turn to our main purpose today, and I'll invite Dr. Crow to come up and lead us through the OFR for Arizona State University.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Let me first give my regards to the Regents and give them some sympathy. You're about to get overly immersed into ASU, and somewhere along the way, about 30 minutes from now, it's going to be, oh my God, he's still talking. And so for both new Regents and for visitors that are here and people that are watching us, this is a process we put in place under the leadership of former Regent Mariucci years ago, who brought a level of business analytics, if you will, and performance metrics to the institutions. And I don't remember the exact number, but this is, I think, our seventh or so, eighth presentation in this mode. They are a powerful process for us to rethink how we're doing and where we're going and where we are and what we have achieved. You all, as regents, are overseeing 3 highly differentiated universities. We're not institutions designed to actually do exactly the same thing. We do some of the same things, some overlapping things, and some completely unique things. And the unique assignment that I'll walk through for ASU is one of scale, intensity, and what I would call social scale outcomes. So for whatever reason, we're not quite sure why, we're near the center of a 4.2 million person city called Greater Phoenix with all of its subdivisions. That 4.2 million person city is growing rapidly. It's the fastest growing county in the United States. It's rapidly growing, rapidly diversifying, economically diversifying, culturally very complex and becoming even more complex. And we ended up, for whatever reason, as the only public university in this community. In other communities of similar scale, and we have a chart to this effect, there are dozens of institutions, or certainly 5 or 10, and you're going to see what that means. And so what our assignment is a very dramatic assignment, as you'll see how we're working our way through things. What I ask of regents is that you bear with me as I give you the update of where we are. You will say, I have seen all of this before, and the answer is no. You haven't. What you saw was the previous report. So this is our formal presentation of how we're doing. as we say, our operational and financial review. Rich Stanley and Maria Anguiano have been the leaders of our team to put all of this together and to make this happen, which is more than just assemblage. It is analytics, it is assessment, it is outcomes and so forth. So let me walk you through things. We do have 4 charts back here. During breaks or at just other moments, you can wonder why we picked these 4. Our charter, the most important driving concept for our institution, which is what we call a derived charter. I have a slide of that, but just to let you know, our charter, we're making certain, and what you'll find is that we're recruiting faculty based on our charter, we're attracting students based on our charter, we're holding ourselves accountable based on our charter. Our charter is our reason for existence. And the thing that I like about it, just to remind everyone, is that this institution is very rare, if not unique, in that it was derivative of a public referendum action. 1958, November 1958, we were voted into existence as a university, comma, in name only. Then this process of transformation began in 1960, roughly. 1960, therefore, was the founding date of us as a university, which would make us one of the youngest universities, certainly the youngest research university in the country. And so now here we are emerging from that. We did not have a charter. Our charter was somewhat generic. Our charter was, you are a teacher's college, always will be a teacher's college. We're never going to let you be a university. We're going to hold you down from being a university. Therefore, find a way to make forward progress under that assumptive model. Okay, pretty hard. Get the vote, start moving forward, still no charter, still no charter, still no charter. We derived the charter, so that's the reason for the charter. These are the ABOR metrics. So these are the metrics that have been put in place during the recession and then updated a couple times. You'll find that we're making substantial progress towards those metrics. As the Regents and I discussed in some recent conversations, they're not the only metrics. They might not even be the most important metrics about who we are, what we are. They are the most quantifiable metrics about how we're performing. This chart is one that we're somewhere between obsessed with and disturbed about, meaning what I mean by that is this is how other people rank us, see us, think about us. So in the classic world that we live in academia, rankings in academia are a function of who you exclude, period. That's the most noted rankings, the most noted whatever, who you exclude, and we decided not to build the institution around exclusion, as you know from our charter. These are other rankings, you know, in terms of our quality, our product, our value. It's a fantastic set of things, and we have a great site on that. And then this last slide over here, which you've seen from me in the past, but I will reiterate again, is a whole new thing for us. And it's basically, and you'll see more of this, and I'm pulling these up as 4 really important things. Universal learner. Universities in the past, and not all colleges or universities will want to do this, but the modal way of working, was to take 18 to 25-year-olds, bring them to your house, put them in with your faculty in a close-knit learning environment and educate them. Okay, what about everybody else? 2 universities in the United States that are research grade, 2 have decided to scale massively, us and Purdue University. A couple of others are trying, Maryland, Penn State, a couple of others. But those 2 universities, my counterpart at Purdue, Mitch Daniels, have decided that we need to start worrying about the lifelong learner, the universal learner. So you'll note here that in this chart, and we'll show this again later, there's pre-K, which is largely at home, family, community, church, you know, some way where people are being brought up and as a toddler and as an infant learning how to learn. Then there's K-12, and the superintendent is here. We're very happy that Superintendent Hoffman is here. And then there's K-12, which is really preparing you to be a successful learner. We think when you're done with high school, and all people who do not graduate from high school, that is a public failure. We have failed them. We live in a society which allows a 16-year-old to drop out of high school at their own decision. A 16-year-old child in our society can drop out of high school. Really? Of those 16-year-old children that drop out of high school, that do not later pursue additional education, which only a small fraction of them do, the outcomes, I won't even overwhelm you to the extent of which their outcomes, their cost to themselves, the impacts on themselves, their options, their choices, their impact on society, their cost to society. It's overwhelming. And so let's just assume that we are failures until we figure out how to graduate everyone from high school, and I'll just say, comma, eventually. Because, life has a lot of challenges for people. And then once that learner is finished with a high school education that's solid, and this is a new logic for us, they become a universal learner. They may go to college with us in a full immersive on-campus environment. They may go to college in the military, taking all kinds of courses and so forth and so on, getting technically skilled and so forth. They may go to a trade school. They may go to a community college. They may go right to work because their family needs money, or they see an opportunity, or they're starting a company, or they think that job making something is really something they want to do. And then later, 5 years later, when they realize they've sort of run their course with that, or 8 years later when they leave the military, or 8 years later when they leave graduate school, they realize that their learning isn't done. But guess what? In our society, with some rare exceptions, there are no other options. You're done. Probably everyone in this room had formal education in immersive settings and then went on with their lives. That's not the way the world works. It's definitely not the way it's going to work. And so these 4 pictures back here, this is a recognition of ours that the lifelong learner, what we call the universal learner, by the way, a word and a phrase ASU trademarked, universal learner. We like that word so much. We have that word now, and we're going to use it. And the reason we're going to use it is that it's going to be a series of steps, processes, tools, devices, systems in which we're going to engage everyone that wants to learn that we can help. Now, we can't help everyone. Now, let me just be clear. Everyone that wants to learn that we can help. There's lots of learners we can't help. We don't teach this. We don't teach that. But there are millions of people that we can influence and help them. So this is a logic. This is a logic that we're working towards. Now, for us to be able to do that, that means that this university, your university, Arizona State University, which is your enterprise university, your scalable university, your university which has to use technology, has to operate in different kinds of ways, has to make these things work, that means it's going to be different. So, there's our charter again. This is what we do. This is who we are. And those of you that were at the Regents Professor event yesterday, you will have even seen in the faculty members that we presented their deep connection to the mission of the institution. So we have successfully altered the culture of this institution such that this is what we do. Now, people often say to me, and they used to say to me, they don't say this so much, they say, well, it's all about you. Just some weirdo leader who, didn't get fired by the Regents when he should have, and so he just happens to still be here, right? And so it's not about me. It's about this. This is not a person, not derivative of any person. This is a derivative of a process. And this is what now is driving the institution. We have showed this slide in all of our recent OFRs. The charter is our promise to the citizens. We are actually willing to say, that's who we are. Hold us accountable to that. And we should take every critique and every criticism, everything imaginable relative to how we are. So that is our promise. It is a public trust, a perpetual trust. We are a perpetual institution established by the founders of this state in a very special role and a very special status. We have a responsibility to fulfill, as written by founders, to the Constitution of the state, to provide this public education. It will have, by the way, in the context of many of the things that the Regents worry about, some of it will be totally, completely, and utterly free. At the end of the day, most of it will be. Some of it will have some cost when measured over your entire life is trivial. All of it will produce substantial measurable return to each of the partakers. Then the last bullet we put up there, and it's not us attempting to be, nasty. You all as regents, as established by the Constitution, it didn't say to you that you should shut the university down if the legislature didn't give you any money. It didn't say that at all. We have to make this work no matter what somebody does. We have to make it work. And you all have special authority, and you use that authority, and you exercise that authority with us. You allow us to be highly entrepreneurial. You allow us to leverage all of our assets. You allow us to enter into agreements with private entities that then help us to leverage our assets. You allow us to build buildings in partnership with other entities where we don't need capital from the government to build those buildings. You allow us to leverage the property that we have that's exempted from all taxes to generate taxes for this institution. You have the authority to do that. And you have granted that authority to us. And we exercise that authority under your supervision, your approval, your guidance, your review. We're accountable to you. You are the agents of the people of the state of Arizona. The executive of the state, the governor, is a member of this body. Each of you in your roles, except for the superintendent, who's also constitutionally assigned to this board. ASU used to report to the superintendent when it was a teacher's college. NAU used to report to the superintendent when it was a teacher's college. We were pulled out. The superintendent was added to the board, and the 2 teachers' colleges were added to the board with the superintendent. That means then that the structural design here, and this is unbelievably important, is that you all are the representatives of the people overseeing the university. The university is a single entity, the university operating in 3 environments. ABOR is the entity. We are one of the operating entities of that entity, one of the operating universities, and you all have that authority. And so this notion here is that this is not a responsibility conditional upon the actions of the legislature. The legislature doesn't run the university. The governor doesn't run the university. The Board of Regents runs the university. This is really, really, really important. And so, I would argue that the legislature has a responsibility to invest in the future generations of Arizona by investing in education, definitively. But they don't run the university. And so I won't stop my presentation there, but I could. Because I know, yeah. So for almost 17 years, we've been working towards what we call a set of design aspirations. The details of those aspirations are not as important as the logic for the aspirations. I was saying to the superintendent earlier, there's nothing that she can do to affect the net outcomes of K through 12 unless she attacks the design, the logic. Nothing. No amount of money, no amount of additional resources will make sufficient difference unless the design. So this was our effort 17 years ago to attack the design. I'll just pick a couple. Use-inspired research was to attack the notion that universities, as research universities, were supposed to only focus on curiosity-driven science, and that curiosity-driven science was the be-all and end-all of all academic life. Well, it's really great stuff, and it's really powerful when someone comes up with something that no one else has ever thought of before. That's really, really powerful. But it's not the be-all and the end-all. Turns out I'd like to keep, my family alive on this planet, and somebody better come up with some solutions for some stuff that's going on. So I call that use-inspired research. Turns out that most universities just take the inherited structure. That's why they all look the same. That's why they seem so illogical to so many people. Well, they all have political science departments and history departments and economics departments and geology departments and this 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 and this. It is so boring and so out of control replicant. Where's Jose? Replicant. See, Jose says replicant isn't a word. So we've been arguing. Jose wins 9 out of 10 grammar fights that I have with him. At least 9 out of 10. Maybe he's won every one of them. Yeah, he has. So. And so, but, so replicant, you got to watch Blade Runner to know what a replicant is. And so, so fusing intellectual disciplines, which is at the heart of part of who ASU is, means that we do not accept the inherited design solely on the basis of the inherited design. We want to fuse disciplines together, create knowledge by transcending disciplines. That's a hallmark of who we are. That's another difference between us and even our sister institutions here in Arizona. So, finally, our economic and social imperative. Now, remember, we're not talking about, so I'm not presenting to you, about how great it is that we have a great chemistry faculty. We're trying to find a new director for our School of Molecular Sciences, and the candidates that we're looking at just in the first round up here of candidates are unbelievable. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about what's our economic and social imperative. Well, it turns out that we have low educational attainment in Arizona. You don't want to be on the right side of this equation with Tennessee, Oklahoma, New Mexico, Alabama, Kentucky, Nevada, Mississippi, West Virginia, Louisiana, and Arkansas. I'm just telling you, you don't want to be on that list, and we are on that list. And I hear so many sorry excuses from the leaders of Arizona about why we are on that list. Sorry excuses. Oh, we have so many Native American kids, they drag everybody down. False. We have low attainment. We have to fix that. Per capita GDP correlates with educational attainment. There's Arizona in the bottom at the middle. So this tells you that this is the percentage of bachelor's degree attainment in your adult population. This is your per capita GDP. Turns out, just to help you with the math, that's called a curve, a plotted curve. That tells you there's a correlation between those two things. So Rick Shangraw taught me all about this in graduate school. So Rick, what does that mean? Did I get it right? Okay, good. And so what this tells you is that Arizona's not even on the curve. We're below even the curve, and our position on the curve is low. That tells you that we have a very, very, very serious problem. This is where things are going. If anything, so these are jobs based on educational level, scaled to the scale of the number of people in Arizona in those jobs. The redder the color, the more prone the job will be to replacement by computation or autonomous systems. The greener the job, the less. So this tells you that below high school associates in some technical, bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, doctoral degrees. Now, it means we don't have very many people that have jobs that require those things. But there's too much red on this chart. And the red tells you that we got a wave of pain coming our way. I don't know how many of you pay attention to politics lately, but there's some things going on out there that I read about in the paper every once in a while about some stresses and some strains that people are feeling relative to their future employability and the competitiveness of the country. And there's even some forces out there, I'm not sure exactly who they all are, that think that our best strategy is to pull in and to sort of circle the wagons and sort of become defensive. I happen to have the opposite view. The best thing we can do is to drive people forward into higher levels of lifelong learning so that they have more adaptability from what they can do at a community college, what they can do with a successful high school diploma, and so forth. So, 1975, I was a college sophomore in 1975. So in 1975, 75. And so this tells me that in 1975, it didn't make that much difference what your educational attainment was relative to your mean earnings. Time goes on. This is a thing called data. So you add up, how many people there are. You ask what their educational attainment is, and then you ask them by looking at their tax returns, how much money do they make? So what this tells you out here is that old world is dead and gone. And now it also tells you that there's a huge difference, which, by the way, creates more social pressure, more back pressure, more resentment, more social instability, all kinds of things, because the gap just keeps growing. So you can do two things. You can say, what I'd really like to do is go back to that world in the past, which would make us about as competitive as these Brexiteers are in the United Kingdom, you're gonna watch a real show over there in the next few years, let me tell you. Let's go back in time. Or you can decide that educational attainment is actually important. So, you've seen these numbers before. Most people, they don't believe them. Most of you don't believe them. It's like, how's that even possible? What's he even talking about? The job doesn't even exist. You need to get out more. If you don't believe this, you need to get out more. You need to talk to people that are 20 years old, 25 years old. You need to talk about where people are going and what they're doing and what their jobs are. So, this is our investment in post-secondary education for a state. This is all 50 states. This is dollars per $1,000 of personal income. Now, these states, New Hampshire, Arizona, Vermont, Colorado, just those states right there, those are all live free or die states. That's the motto on the New Hampshire license plate. So when people tell me, they say, are you from Arizona? I say, yeah. What's Arizona like? I said, well, it's kind of like a sandy version of New Hampshire. Live free or die, which I happen to like. And I'm not even necessarily upset at these low levels of investment in and of themselves. Now, I'll tell you, do you want to know the in-state tuition at New Hampshire, Vermont, or Colorado? The other live free or die states? Well, it's substantially more than ours. And so what we need in Arizona is to not pay too much attention to these kinds of charts, because it might be that being the most efficient or the most effective or whatever over here is pretty good. But we do think, and we could say, that what we have more than a lag of investment in the institution is a lag in the investment in the actual person, the individual. So the logic where we presently sit as a board, I believe, is fantastic. Do not invest in this institution as an institution, except every once in a while when we come to you and say, we want to get closer to Star Trek and we need some Star Trek research facilities. And if you invest in those, keep that investment up, and then that's it. You don't have to invest in anything else. All we need you to invest in is to help the kids from Arizona to come to this institution. That's it. That's the entire model. We have no takers of the model. That model has been rejected by the executive, is being considered by the legislative. We have no takers for that model right now. We have no model. So of these 50 states, only one does not have a model for the funding of higher education. Only one. Now, if you're the only one on something, you better be a genius. My dad used to tell me that if you ever get into the Washington Post on the front page, you better have won the Medal of Honor. Because all the other articles aren't good. And so if you want to be low on this list, that's fine. But we better have a plan, we better have a strategy, we better have a model, and we think the model should be focused on the person, the learner. This probably isn't a good sign. So this tells us that there are many other more important priorities in Arizona. That's one thing it tells us. There's nothing wrong with that. There are lots of important priorities in Arizona. This tells us that we've been experiencing a dramatic, continuing, and ongoing decline in public investment in higher education. And I'm raising my hand to you as the chief executive of this institution, saying to you that because we do not have the support that we need for the kids from Arizona, the entire model is at risk. You can process that however you want. We say that over and over. People don't pay much attention to us, but I'm hopeful that the board can help fight with every ounce that you have for the 50-50 model. That's the model. Now, this is educational attainment by ethnicity. Now, you don't need to study it and try to weigh it. Why is it different? Why is it different? Well, the answer is, shouldn't be. It is, and we need to fix it. There's very, very, very significant differences that are derivative of something. I'm not saying they're derivative of ethnicity. They're derivative of something. I could cut this by another model. I could cut this by family income, and the differences are even more acute. So we can't have this unless what we want is 1,000 years of revolution in the United States. Because it turned out that as the economy modernized, we left a lot of people behind for whatever reason. And I know what I would do if I got left behind. Like, where is my battle armor? Because there's going to be some changes. Because that's the way human beings are. You treat people unfairly and you leave people behind, and they will be back for you. You can see the early signs of that right now, because this is not fair. Now, we all know it's not fair. Just look at, don't even study it. Tell me why it's different. So in Arizona, we have an Achilles heel. So the fastest growing ethnic group in Arizona are Hispanics, maybe in the US also. I don't remember the statistics. So you can see the changes, where we are in 2018, where we'll be in 2054. We have very uneven outcomes in a very dramatically altering culture. I'm calling it like fix it, pay now, or pay later. And the pay later will be you're not competitive. And the pay later will be, so some of you heard my numbers yesterday, so Arizona's per capita GDP is a quarter less, 25% less than Colorado. We're 44th in median income. And I really don't even care what the reason is. You don't want to be 44th in anything. It makes no difference. You could tell me every sorry excuse you could possibly imagine. I don't care. Educational attainment is unevenly distributed by geography. So here you have orange is less than high school. Maria, what's the unit of analysis on this? These are dots. These are so many thousands of people. I just can't remember how many thousands there were. The most important point is not how many the dots are. The most important point is why are there whole, what? 1,000. So why are there whole neighborhoods, entire communities, swaths of the entire place where the average educational attainment in those 1,000 people is less than high school? You don't want this. You got people less than, the number of jobs available for a person with a high school diploma or less in the U.S. economy since 2007 is 25% fewer jobs, period. There's no place to work. There's no job to have. Now, this is this funny chart that I mentioned. So these are the largest metropolitan areas in the United States by rank of size. This is the one you live in, most of you. This is the one that we're in, Phoenix. This tells you how many students there are enrolled in undergraduate programs at colleges producing bachelor's degrees in each of those metropolitan areas. Now, I can tell you there's two funny things about Phoenix on this chart. One, there's only one color. That's us. We're doing like a hell of a job. There ain't nobody in any of these other places as a single institution doing that. Just look at that. And this includes everybody, by the way. This is everybody. Every bachelor's degree awarding institution in this metropolitan area. Now, look at that dude. That'd be Miami. I didn't even want to talk about these creatures. Look at that creature. New York City Metro, they got a couple colleges. And they got a lot of people in college. But just look at the people around us. Look at Seattle over here. That's the University of Washington. These are the other universities in Seattle Metro. Total population of the metro. You can see it there. It's this black dot. And so we got a weird situation. So you should say, as some have said, some columnists have said, we need more institutions. I mean, yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. But we don't have 30 years to build them. So you have your frontline unit, ASU, doing everything that it can to sort of hold the fort as long as possible until other institutions can be built. And we're working with other institutions. We're working with everybody and anybody that wants to get something going to help make something happen. Because, by the way, you'll also notice that our number is nowhere near the numbers of, like, here's two metro areas, Boston and San Francisco, that we happen to be pegged in between. We get Philadelphia over here, but look at Miami. Who's been to Miami lately? I don't know what's going on there, but it's like unbelievable. Now they're all going to be swept away by the ocean. The county administrator, the county executive for Miami-Dade County was here not too long ago. His name is Carlos, and I said, Carlos, what are you going to do, dude? I mean, the ocean water is going to come right up through the rocks underneath you. He says, I know. We're working on it. And so, and so this might give them some upper hand on working it. Now, that's Florida International. So, there we go. So, that was the background. Now, performance and accomplishment. So, now that's our assignment is, to work at scale. That's our assignment. So, lots of partnerships have been put in place. We opened the Washington Center, which I talked about yesterday. Naming gift for the Watts College of Public Service. Biodesign C was open, still advancing our research enterprise. We're the fastest growing research university in the United States. Not fastest growing in number of students, fastest growing in the rate of growth of our research enterprise. While at the same time taking on this scaled thing, because it turns out, if I go back to this chart, let's see. University of Michigan, University of Washington, Stanford, University of California at San Francisco, MIT and Harvard and a bunch of others, Emory, Georgia Tech, University of Pennsylvania. You want me to keep walking through this? There are massive, world-class, unbelievable institutions in these cities. Phoenix, until just a few years ago, didn't have a research university. It does now. And so our second assignment was build a competitive, world-class, scaled research university capable of being the same as the University of Washington, the same as the University of Minnesota, et cetera. I don't know why this isn't working. Okay. Well, I'm pressing it more than... Oh, so how many of the regents saw our little rodent crater video? Some of you? Yeah, so it's fantastic in terms of things that are going on. I'm not going to walk you through all of this. We have Uber visiting today, by the way. So Uber is, can we take, how many Uber drivers there are? It's over 1 million. You know how many of them graduated from college?
2.
No, like about 200, 300,000 of them. 700,000 didn't. You know how many of them want to graduate from college? All of them. So how do you work on that? This is excellence. You all, I think, know by now, we do not have to beat this horse here, that this is an outstanding university whose reputation continues to rise. Top producer of Fulbright scholars, top university for undergraduate education, number 2 among all universities in terms of online degrees, a leader in undergraduate education, top 10 fine arts program, graduates, top 10 university for research. I'm not going to walk through all of this. You should feel comfortable that we have matured into this class of institution, but unlike other universities in this class of institutions, we have taken on this assignment of scale. Excellence at scale. Oh, number 1 choice for international students of any public university in the country. Top school for veterans. These are not our measurements. These are not self-assessments. These are the assessments of others. Top 10 in the world for business management. Number 1 global management degree at the Thunderbird School of Global Management, which we're building the new headquarters for. So from a content perspective, from a performance perspective, from an outcome perspective, Times Higher Education, which ranked every major university in the planet on the quality of its graduates, found that in the United States, we were ranked 9th. We'll take that. Of the top 10, 2 were publics, 8 were privates. Us and the University of Florida, we'll take that. That's an unbelievable achievement by our faculty. So, our accomplishments, I think, can be classified into this simple chart. Student success, we're at the highest level of access the institution has ever achieved. I've heard people recently talk about longing for the ASU of the past. Could we not just move back to the past? 1987 was a year I heard someone pick. (1987), we had a 12% four-year graduation rate. 2% of our students were eligible for Pell Grants. We were not a research university. We did not have a high reputation. We were an emerging university in 1987. our student body was almost totally white in 1987. It's unbelievable. We now have access. We have figured that out. That's a special combination that has to be unlocked. Affordability. I do not understand how people don't understand that this is an affordable institution, because here's how it works. Here's how it works. We're going to get you through if you want to go to this place. If you have no money, come on down. If you work hard, did well in high school, and have no money, come on down. I also don't know what else this is being compared to. Affordability compared to what? What world-class research university could you go to as a resident of the state of Arizona and attain your degree with a relatively modest cost? Now, that doesn't mean there aren't exceptions to this or outliers. There are, and we try to work on those, but we have affordability, significant affordability. In fact, we're listed by everybody that ranks where do you go to get the best deal in the entire country. We're on that list. Outcomes. Highest retention we've ever had, highest graduation rate we've ever had, highest and diverse class we've ever had. We think we're delivering. We're in the realm now where we're beginning to deliver significant outcomes in terms of student success. In research, forget these three things. Expenditures, we're doing very well. That's how you measure competitiveness against schools. Tech transfer, we're in the top 20 in the country, top 30 in the whole planet. We're very excited about that. Lots of venture-backed and investor-backed companies, top rankings in terms of our research activities and so forth. Forget all that. We exist. We have built a research university in Phoenix, Arizona, and it exists. And it is competitive. If you had lined up, so at the wake that was held for me when I came to this job from Columbia University, literally a wake. It was like a roast and a wake. The wake was, why would you ever go there? They're not a research university. And they can never be one. Because you can't do what they're trying to do, that you can't be big like that. We were already big then, and do that. And I said, well, you guys are stupid. You have no idea what you're talking about. If we can't get major research universities in all of the big cities in the United States as they emerge, if we can't continue to evolve our country beyond your idea of who should have what and who shouldn't, then we're done. And the Chinese, who are building 100 research universities, or others around the world, will then overtake us at some point, and we'll be sitting around wishing we had a competitive economy. Financial health. Morgan Olson, who has led our team for 10 years, has, and we're going to show you some slides in this, we've grown our net assets, we've grown our revenue, and we've contained our costs. I mean, okay. That's what you all as a board want us to do. So we haven't done this or pulled these things off from the perspective of not containing our costs. Students. One, we have a lot of students, and they're very diverse, but we did have a Rhodes this year, a Marshall, a Gates Cambridge Scholar, and a Truman. So the number of universities that had like all four of those in the whole country, 5. In the whole country. So that's just like, just throw down and tell all these other people to shut up about the quality of this institution or the quality of our students. Chantel came to our, she's from Harare, Zimbabwe, and she came here as a MasterCard scholar. She won this Rhodes Scholar. We had her appear the other day before one of our university leadership teams. Mark, what did she have to say?
Well, she's incredibly thankful for the opportunity she had to come to Arizona State University. And it's really launched her. She did a master's degree with us. She's now deciding on which doctor of philosophy she's going to pursue at Oxford, whether in international relations or international development. And she's highly committed to going back to Harare, where she can make an impact in the lives of those people in Zimbabwe.
This guy, Frank Smith, some of you will recall him. He was the student body president for the downtown campus, won this Marshall Scholarship. He was raised in foster care. As he said, I'm telling you only things he talks about publicly. Otherwise, I couldn't tell you what he tells me privately because under the student confidentiality. But he was raised by abusive parents, then abusive foster parents, homeless, everything you can possibly imagine. physical abuse, everything you can possibly imagine. Everything you can imagine. So I said, Frank, you should get that all off your chest. You should write a book. I was raised by wolves, literally, wolves, animals, and just get that off your chest and move on with your life. So he's moving on with his life, and he's doing great things, and he is an example of a local Arizona kid now operating at the highest level regardless of his circumstance. Now, we're just picking these kids. These are just some of our examples. So undergraduate enrollment is up 45% in 5 years. Remember, we're the institution you assigned scale. Figure it out. We pay you people a lot of money. Figure it out. Well, that's the way it's supposed to be. Figure it out. Now, the reason you have this little gap here, so this is our achievement. We're above our goal line right now. So we're moving well above our longer term goals, and we're likely to outperform those goals dramatically. Now, I'll tell you that when the goals were set, we did not know how we would attain the goals. And as I mentioned to the regents yesterday, we're in a moment in our own evolutionary history where our rate of innovation, our speed of innovation, the impacts of our innovations are accelerating so quickly that it's even surprising to us. And so we will hit our enrollment goals short of some kind of catastrophic social or economic event that we can't predict, but we worry about. This is graduate enrollment, up 46% in 5 years. You can see the slope of that line. So people will say, and I talk to some of our friends in the legislature, and they say, well, when I get done with you, you're not going to have any graduate programs. You're not going to be a research university, and we're going to run your tail, meaning me, out of this place because we don't need people like you. So I still talk to people today that tell me that. Today. And I'm like, well, okay. I'm just going to outlive you and see what you look like when you're dead. And so this is the way, as Jim knows, this is the way my brain actually works. So, is that not true? So what this tells you is that we have figured out how to do a part of our assignment. Remember what our assignment is. We have to go from, when I came here, we had 8,000 graduates per year. Our 2025 goal set by you is 32,000 graduates. That's 4 times the productivity of the University of Illinois at Urbana. And by the time we get there, we'll be doing the same level of research as the University of Illinois at Urbana. So producing 4 times the graduates at the maximum diversity possible, doing the same level of research. Okay. That's what Arizona created, an environment that could be created. I mean, this institution could be created in Arizona. Freshman class. By the way, there's all kinds of people against this. 53% of our Arizona freshmen come from underrepresented populations. So here's what we hear. Well, those people aren't going to vote for me. Well, no, because you call them those kinds of people. And so it's not likely that if you think of them as those kinds of people that they're going to be voting for you. And so setting that aside, you know, we're trying to capture the full talent base of this entire community. The full talent base of this entire community. One of our professors last night got up and said he'd grown up in England. His parents had gone to, 9th grade or something like that. He lived in public housing. He's a member of the National Academy of Sciences. He walked through this whole thing, and there he was. Well, that's these kids, some of them. Same kind of circumstances. They now have this opportunity. And they're not, and by the way, they're all qualified. There's no one on this list. There's no one at this institution that isn't qualified. And we got thousands that want to get qualified. So we have ways to get you qualified if you're not qualified. We call it the 400-hour SAT test. You can take our online courses at no cost, do well in those online courses in our Global Freshman Academy, and earn your way into the university. So, by the way, if the color is other than gray, so we made white gray just to give contrast here. So this is the institution, white, 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 going smaller, white, white, a few non-white, non-white. Oh, now, looks like it maybe now represents Arizona, and it didn't before. So we've grown the institution, diversified the institution, and if you want Arizona to be successful, and you look like we did in 1980, you ain't going to be successful. You're going to be burned down. So you've seen this slide before, but this is the update. This shows you the nature of our freshman class, their family incomes. The lower incomes are to the left. 02 was the gray, 09 was the maroon. So what we've done here, the simple chart here is our freshman class is now representative of the actual socioeconomic diversity of the community. Now, therefore, all arguments about the cost of attendance to the institution, all arguments about the cost of tuition, all of them, they're looking at the wrong year. They should have been looking at the institution in 2002. They should have been looking at the institution in 1985. They should have been looking at the institution in 1980 because this was not going on. This is going on now. So how could those be factors relative to anything if you can do this? Okay, somebody said along the way, we got a lot of kids that didn't go to college. Well, here's what we've done since 02. So again, if the institution isn't affordable, how does this happen? First generation families generally have lower incomes in the economy, not always, but 99% of the time. So how does this happen? You think this is a random outcome? I know the regents know it's not a random outcome. It is not. I have to go back to my normal self now. It is not a random outcome. This is a designed outcome. This is the purpose of the institution. Now, how do you do that and have record retention? Well, so the weirdos that we talk to say, well, you must lower the requirements. I'm like, man, I'm going to check out your reading ability. And so it turns out we haven't lowered any requirements. The rigor of the institution has accelerated. Go back to this charts on who is hiring our graduates, what they think of our graduates. You can't be ranked 9th in the United States in a global survey for the quality of your graduates, or 5th by the Wall Street Journal among all corporations operating in the United States. You can't have 13,000 companies and social service organizations and the military coming here to recruit people. You can't be the largest producer of nurses for the Army and one of the largest producers of this or that, the largest producer of college graduates for the Intel Corporation, and not be producing high quality graduates. Now we're producing high-quality graduates from every family. So the performance of our faculty in adjusting to the complexity of the institution has been astounding. Remember, this many kids come from a family where no one has ever been to college. If you want to know who doesn't graduate from college, in the highest percentage, it's kids from families where no one has ever been to college. You want to get a college graduate through a university, make them white, from a wealthy family with 2 college graduate parents. Now you're cooking. It's all going to work out. Well, that ain't us. So, cost. Blue is our older sister to the south. Green is our fraternal sister to the north. That is fraternal twins. And then there's us, meaning 2 teachers' colleges. And then there's us. So this tells you that whatever we have been doing, and it's kind of interesting that we're the ones singled out as being a horrible creature. I mean, we got like lawsuits out the wazoo against us right now. And so we are being singled out as a horrible creature when, in fact, looks to me, we've done a pretty good job of stabilizing our tuition increase over a very long period of time. In fact, our tuition increase over the last 7 years has averaged 1.7%, give or take. Our model for tuition going out into these other years by these ladies over here. I'm going to walk right by you. So way out over here, we're willing to keep the curve of that line the same or less for as far as we can project. That would say that actions against this institution relative to its cost, its diversity, et cetera, are about 20 years too late. We solved it. This is one of the ways that we solve it. This is the financial aid model, updated for you all. This basically tells you that based on family income, so we get a lot of complaints from people that say to middle class families out here, we don't give them any financial aid from the university. Orange is the financial aid from the university. So I look at this and I say, okay, well, you can see the lines are relatively similar here, so please shut up. We hear this over and over and over and over, that the university is being biased to kids from lower income families. Show me that bias. There's no bias. Most of our financial aid at this institution is for merit. So this is performance, retention of the freshman class, first year freshman retention rate. We're going to start dropping the term freshman at some point. We're going to go to first year, second year, third year, fourth year. Freshman's an old thing from like 1900. So, graduation rates, 4-year, 5-year, 6-year. That 6-year rate now above 70%. Resident freshmen. It's unbelievable. That was the graduation rate at this institution the day that I came. 28.4%. 4. I don't think anybody at this board ever talked about graduation rate back then. So these are graduation rates among the schools that are a part of the University Innovation Alliance. And you can see that we're a middle roader here. So this school, 70% Pell with the largest number of African American graduates of any institution in the country. This school, 33% 4-year graduation rate, very egalitarian in its approach, not as technologically advanced as we are. Central Florida, massive growth, 40% 4-year. Kansas does fantastic. They admit anyone that finishes from a Kansas high school. So these have different admission standards, very, very egalitarian. Iowa State, same thing. Michigan State, right here, there's us. And Riverside, Ohio State, and Austin only admit A students. So our 4-year graduation rate for A only students, just to be clear, is right here. Our 4-year graduation rate for A students. And by the way, we have more A students in our freshman class than most people have in their freshman class. Purdue slightly beats us, and we were beating them last year or the year before, and now we're slightly behind them. So that's the institution that we look at. So numbers of degrees awarded, up 33% since 2013. Please drive into the market of Arizona more high-quality graduates of Arizona State University. So we're up by a third. Degrees awarded in high-demand fields, up 46% since 2013. And this curve is about to go like this. STEM degrees up 55% since 2013. A 55% increase in STEM degrees. As far as I can tell, I've never met a politician in Arizona yet that thinks that this is important. I hope so. Yeah. Yes. It's not just that, but we have 4,000 biology majors in our School of Life Sciences also. We have 18,000 engineering majors on campus. We have very, very large science and engineering programs.
Have we had significant growth in those areas as well?
Huge. And that's why these numbers are just getting started. This is Fulton Engineering, to your point. So in 2009, we had 6,400 students in engineering. Now we have 22,406 about 18,000 of which are on campus. So I'm just telling you, you could bring in here about 20 other college presidents and you could say, that has to be a typo. No one went from 1,300 engineering graduates in 08 and 09 to 4,100 engineering graduates. And by the way, we're picking up on this in the market, companies that want to be more concentrated by us, connected to us. Research. Again, we didn't have a research university at scale. We have a research university at scale. We couldn't get these stories into the Arizona Republic other than generic stories, like AP stories. So the first one on the left, that guy and his faculty team produced the highest efficiency solar cell converting photons to electrons that our species has ever made. You'd think that would be an interesting story. You'd think it would be an interesting story, but it wasn't. Because we had so much energy going in to make certain that solar power didn't really evolve in Arizona that maybe somebody wasn't interested in how do you actually make it more efficient. The middle one, discovery of the earliest stars. So a team of ASU scientists, students and faculty and staff determined this, by the way, if you want to look at this closely later, this is the Big Bang, this is the evolution of the universe, this is 13.8 billion years later. When was the first star? So physics tells us, and the present theory is available, that all of the energy and all of the matter in the entire universe was contained in a small sphere of 1 millimeter across, and which, you go to Genesis 1, let there be light, big explosion. What happened? Well, this is what they think happened. When was the first star? When did it emit light? Well, our people measured the first light from the first star for the first time. That's a big deal. How do you measure that? How do you think of it? How do you make it happen? And then this cancer-fighting nano robot, you tell me what that is. You get a nano means below the size of a molecule, human engineered, guided robot that goes to where cancer is and cuts off the blood flow. It's a tremendous thing. So this is an interesting number. Panch, what does this number mean?
So this number essentially puts us in the top.
To be clear, this number right here, $618 million of research expenditures in the year that ended last year, June 30th.
Year over year, we increased our research expenditures by 13%. People told us that when the number gets larger, it's harder to have higher percentages. Over the ABOR goal last year, it was 562.5 for the FY18. We made 618, so we increased our expenditures by 10% more than the goal itself, which was several years ago thought of as an impossible goal to achieve, which is because of the fantastic work by our faculty, students, and all the researchers in the university, and our leaders who motivate them to do that, deans and chairs and others. And in terms of the national ranking, 2 years old ranking that we have access to.
It'll look something like that.
Something like that. But so in terms of the ranking in total research expenditures without a medical school, will probably be 7 or 6. We are quickly climbing to the top 5. We'll be in the league of MIT, Georgia Tech, UC Berkeley, and when we achieve $815 million, we'll be in the top 3.
So well, our goal at that point, we are going to be the most significant performing research university that doesn't have a medical school on the planet. We think that goal is attainable. So we're in that direction. So I haven't usually shown our older sister to the south in any of these slides, but in these slides I'm showing her so that, and President Robbins agrees with this, he's seen these pictures, to show that we are now equally mature. We're all grown up. And when you get all grown up, here's what it means. And so just to show you how this chart works, 876 colleges or universities in the United States spent at least $1 in research. And if they had a medical school, the National Science Foundation backs those medical school expenditures out and then says, what is the competitiveness of the non-medical research capability of all of the universities. So each of the logos that you see there, Stanford, Columbia, Rutgers, North Carolina, Arizona, and Ohio State, we beat because we were 22nd. That means that you as regents should now, if you don't already, know with full and complete understanding that you have 2 world-class research universities in Arizona, not 1. We didn't come up with these goals, these measures. So in each of these subjects, we've now added our sister also to let you know where we are in terms of maturity. We don't win in everything. We win in a lot of things. These are subjects. Subjects. Non-science and engineering research, humanities research, subjects. So look at geological and earth sciences. 344 schools in the United States have at least $1 of expenditure. We are second, ahead of the tree up there in Stanford, ahead of those, whatever that maroon and gray thing is at MIT, Penn State, Virginia Tech, Michigan, Arizona, Texas A&M, and the powerful University of Alaska, which is pretty good in this stuff because they have a big polar and geological research thing. So it's also worth noting that the National Science Foundation is the most elite funding organization on the planet for science. They funded at least $1 of work at 579 American colleges. Those below there are the ones we beat. And so this is a big deal, a big achievement for our faculty, who, by the way, we also said you have to produce 3 times as many graduates of unbelievable diversity while you're doing this. DOD funding, DOE funding, Department of Energy. So we outperformed our peers. These are goals that you've given us. Patents issues, license, startup companies were the gold. The maroon is the median of our ABOR peers. So how are we doing financially? So those 2 kids are really happy, but I don't think they're happy because of the finances of the university. They may have just reviewed our net asset position. Yeah. But they're happier than what it reflects, and so we've demonstrated financial health. Our online programs, our campaign, our SkySong activities, a whole range of things. So we'll go through some of this, but Rick Shangraw is here, the CEO of Enterprise Partners. You're on their floor. This is Enterprise Partners' facility for the use of the university. The foundation is in there and so forth and so on. So just, Rick, in a minute, how are we doing relative? Are we getting any resources from you guys?
I think what we decided to do, President Crow.
Oh, do you want Rick to use the microphone? Rick, you got to use the microphone because we're broadcasting.
Oh, coming down. Thank you, President Crow.
Yes.
Regents,
Somebody took my Mountain Dew.
what President Crow encouraged us to do was to rethink about fundraising for the university and move it towards a concept called resource raising. And so we've taken this broader conceptualization of resource raising for the university, which means we're not only fundraising, which we're doing and doing well, we're have exceeded the target for our campaign already, even though we have another year and a half left. That's a $1.5 billion campaign. We're currently at about 1.65, almost 1.7 billion on that campaign. And as President Crow has instructed me, we will end above 2 billion, and I can assure you we will do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the real estate side, we now have almost $250 million of investments in facilities that are connected to and supporting the university's mission. We call it university development, not real estate development. We also have substantially grown our technology transfer activity, and while it is not producing money at the level that I hope or President Crow hopes, it's positioned to do that, which is what's very important. And then we're working in some other areas. But at the end of the day, we have about $1.2 billion in assets, and we contribute approximately $150 to $200 million a year over to the university.
and I hope to double both those numbers over the next 3 to 5 years.
Right. So, on the financial side, we use 17% fewer resources per degree awarded than the national median. All the schools to the left of us, Oregon, Washington State, Colorado, Utah, Arizona, we put Purdue in there, Washington, UCLA, these are all actual schools. This is all the money they got for tuition and all the money they got from state appropriations at a very high intensive research university. And what did it cost them to produce a degree? There's where we are. That again is not by accident, that's by design. That goes by superintendent to this notion is that it's not about resources. Measurements of how many resources you have are not indicative of what you can do. It's how you use the resources, how they're designed, how they work. We use 8.3% fewer resources per degree for median than universities without medical schools. That's narrowing the group a bit. This basically shows you that we can constrain our costs going forward. So, Maria, why don't you explain this chart?
This is our educational. Oh.
I think it's on, yeah.
This shows our educational expenses over time from 2008, with the yellow being today's dollars, and then we adjusted for 2008 to see that if we had kept constant dollars, we'd actually be much lower in our cost per student.
So I doubt if there's another research university in the country that has a line this flat. You'd have to really find it, show it to me, because it's not the way these systems work. This is really, really important. It goes to who we are, how we work, how we're operating, all these things. So the number of employees per 100 students among our peers is that line at the top, the maroon line at the top. The gold bar at the bottom is us. So a few years ago when the Goldwater Institute put out some story haranguing us because we had too many employees that weren't faculty members, like, what are you talking about? You guys must have gotten lost on the trail somewhere, and now you're over into fantasy land. This is the actual data. It's easy to know how many students someone has. It's easy to know how many employees someone has, to add them all up and divide it, and that's what it looks like. Space. Morgan Olson, what does this mean? Microphone, right there.
What this shows you is the number of square feet that we have per FTE student, and as you can see from the benchmarks here, we make good use of all the space that we have available to this. And as a continuously growing institution, one of our challenges actually is scaling the institution and figuring out ways to do that, and part of that is a couple slides back it talked about capturing economy of scale. This is an example of that.
So what this tells you again is it's not about space. It's not about how many buildings you have, how many square feet you have. Yeah, you need those things, but that isn't what it's about. You can produce at the level that we're producing with a fraction of the space of other places. Here you see the University of Maryland, University of Arizona, A&M, Texas A&M, Illinois, Texas, Austin, UCLA, Ohio State. Unbelievable. Yep.
Just briefly, so the initial reaction to both of those is one way or the other. One is that you're very efficient. The other, which comes out of other places, is that you have bigger classes, less personalized experience, that you have people, jammed in space where other people have more lab space or whatever it is. So what's the response to that?
Well, that's a great, I'm glad you asked it that way, because that means with that crammed in classrooms, with those fewer spaces, by all rankings, we produce superior graduates. So it could be that that's actually a better environment. And so we don't have that. We don't have crammed in spaces. What we have is massive use of technology. What we have is central control of the allocation of our resources to make them infinitely more efficient. We don't have unit control of resources. Oh, you can't use this classroom. You can't use this. Oh, that's really reserved for every 9th Saturday that somebody from this department might want to use it, so therefore you can never use it. And so what we don't have is we don't have that. But even if we did have all of that, and it was this chaotic, So how do we now have a 70% 6-year graduation rate for graduates that are going into a workforce where they're highly valued, and we know that by external measurements. And so whatever it is that is the mix of the calculation, the old logic that it's about resources, it's about space, it's about class size, I think it's an archaic logic no longer relevant to the actual macro assessment of the institution. So if we need really small classes, Mark or Stephanie, what are examples of areas where we have really small classes? And the answer is probably like wherever we need them.
That is the answer. We use space. We centralize our scheduling of space so that we optimize.
So most universities schedule space at the department level. We schedule space at the university level.
And so we maintain the same schedule happens on all 4 campuses. So because we have a lot of students who go between campuses, and to manage where they live, where they work, all their other demands on their life.
So at most universities, you couldn't do that because the faculty would say they don't want to do that. Here, the faculty are like, yeah, if that works, let's do that. Let's set up the whole thing on one schedule. We don't. Donna can talk about this. We don't cram things down. We just say, well, this is what we're going to have to do to make things work.
Yeah, so we really optimize the space we have, and it's used every ounce of time that we can possibly squeeze out of it, and so it's very busy all the time. In fact, I know that, for example, at our West Campus, our labs are now scheduled Saturday mornings because that optimizes use of the space.
So, Donna, as president of the Academic Senate, do you want to comment on the faculty revolt from centralized classroom scheduling?
It's been pretty quiet on that front. I haven't heard anything.
Yeah, so that's not been one of our issues. That is an issue at some places.
Yeah, but I think we've done an exceptional job at really using all of our resources very effectively and really just kind of cross-pollinating the campuses to engage all the faculty and all the students, and it's worked really well.
Yeah, so Regent Manson, I think one of the things that happens to us is that, so people see these kinds of differences and then they assume, well, it must be that the place is no good. This is actually one of the things that works against us. It works against our brand because we're being compared against other places for which the assessment is, well, how many classes under 20 students do you have? So, Mark, how many classes under 20 students do we have? You guys, leave the microphone on.
They're trying to be efficient.
I'm going to have a stroke.
We have thousands of classes that are 20 students or less.
Thousands. Every class that needs to be 20 students or less, we don't sit back and say, you have to teach this class with 80 students in it, and the faculty say, well, it's only going to be 20. I mean, so pedagogical design is the design of the faculty.
Yeah,
and so
I was going to say, the scheduling of classes is central. The determination of how much capacity is needed for the class is at the unit level.
And these are huge differences, and these differences produce this. They produce this outcome. So remember, we're also running an institution without responsibility-centered management. So Morgan and Maria, why don't you tell us what responsibility-centered management means at a university? Maria, you get a cut at this. Yeah.
There are all sorts of, there's kind of a continuum in terms of how resources are allocated and controlled at an institution, but essentially we run on sort of a centrally developed planning-based model for our resource allocation. We do try to build lots of incentives for people to do things that we would like them to do and disincentives for things that we'd rather people didn't do in terms of how they manage and use resources. On the other hand, responsibility-centered management is an approach whereby everything is highly decentralized, and there's a lot of charging back of costs from unit to unit.
Taxes, charges.
For example, if you go to the University of Pennsylvania, the president goes out and makes a development call for the School of Engineering. The School of Engineering gets a bill for the president's time. Our view is that there are advantages to
It'd be large.
to each, but you really need to sort of match to the nature of your institution. When you're at an institution, frankly, that has a leader with a lot of ideas, to have to say to them, well, gosh, you got to go ask this dean over there whether you can do that, probably wouldn't work very well. And so what we try to make sure we do in terms of kind of a best of both worlds approach is that we do have incentives for people to hit some of the goals that President Crow has been talking about, to be able to manage resources effectively so we can have that cost effectiveness, those types of things. And Maria, you may want to add to that.
Maria, yeah.
I guess the only thing I would add is that.
So Maria is the former CFO of UC Riverside, former chief of staff to the University of California, a chief financial officer for the system, former private sector in financial person, former CFO of Minerva,
Great.
and a regent of the University of California.
So I guess the only other thing I would add is when we took away the chargebacks at my prior institution, we got rid of 15,000 accounting entries. So there's also a lot of back-end logistics that happens when you have RCM.
So we don't have any of that. And so what it means, it turns out it goes back to this question of design. We designed ourselves differently. Now, we had one other advantage here, is that we decided, because we're a latecomer, these are all older institutions than us. They've all been around for a long time. They all have largely fixed cultures. The cultures are not likely to be altered, to be clear. The cultures are not likely to be altered. And so you could send in president after president after president to change the cultures, and they will fail. And so I wouldn't take that approach. There's other ways to bring about demonstrable changes. In our case, we could introduce technology, couple the technology with the institution in kind of a modern way, and then gain significant advantage. So I'm going to ask Stephanie Lindquist, our deputy provost, to speak, because she came to us from a deanship at the University of Georgia, and she was a dean at the University of Texas. She probably has noticed one or two differences. She's been in like shock mode, I think, for the first year and a half, 2 years that she's been here. But just this notion of the difference in the use of technology and its impact on how we're structured, how different we are.
Yeah, I think the two places.
I hope so. I think Morgan turned it off again.
Saving electricity.
As you can tell, we're very technologically sophisticated. Yeah, having come from two vastly different institutions than this, in the sense of, certainly in terms of leveraging technology, Georgia is a very traditional place, and Texas is, I think, far more sophisticated technologically, but nevertheless, ASU just takes it off the charts in terms of how the students interact with technology, our adaptive learning, the sort of advancements we're making in learning in the classroom with technology and distance learning in particular. So it's dramatically different.
So different structure, different design, different allocation model, different decision-making model. The first full year I was here, a former regent who did not like me by any means, asked me to explain why it was we were able to do a whole list of things that the other universities, for whatever reason, didn't do. I said, okay, this is an interesting note. I can send it to you if you'd like to see it. And so it's over 15 years ago. And I said, well, here are 12 decisions we made they didn't make. And here are the results of those decisions. And it doesn't mean that our decisions are always right, far from it. Or that they're not making great decisions. They are. It's just that we needed to produce a different outcome. We had a different assignment. So we're not going to make the same decisions. If we had, you know where our space would be? If we were operating at this level of efficiency? Larger than this. Meaning, it's like we couldn't do it. It's impossible. We have no capital budgeting from the state on a regular basis. They do. I don't know if you've ever been on the campus of the second one over there. It's like you're at Starfleet headquarters on a golf course. And so it's like, it's unbelievable. And it's in one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the whole country. I pay rent in that neighborhood. I'm familiar with it. So this is our 08 and then FY18 revenue chart. The details are not important. What's important is the scaling effect, the number of revenue sources, and everything related to blue, the blue color, is us in the market competing against someone else to acquire a student. So yes, this is a tuition-heavy institution. This is not an endowment-heavy institution. This is not a public-heavy institution. This is a tuition-heavy institution. But look at the number of resources. Now, the darker shades right here, just this right here, that's the money we receive from people in Arizona. Not exclusively, but you get the gist of it. Just process that. So to make the institution work, this looks a lot like the University of Vermont, which is in another live free or die state, where they don't give anything to the University of Vermont. I think their total public allocation, somebody can look this up, is like $25 million. How do they fund the University of Vermont? They get kids that don't want to live in New York going to Vermont. And so, you know, you can see where we are. Now, what we're really trying to show you here is just growth, resources, and that our objectives are, we're not planning on financing the institution from the state. As we look forward, we're not planning on that. What we'd like from the state is a fair investment for the kids from the state to help the university to be more successful. This is fundraising, which has been dramatically altered. I just want to make this one point here. So our goal for the year that we're in is 225. Our year to date is 268. And the year ends on June 30th. So our fundraising, typically, if you go all the way back here to 02, 03, it's $30, $40 million a year. Rick and his team's goal, Gretchen Bulig, who's the president, our CEO of our foundation, steady state funding forever, $200 million a year going forward, $1 billion plus endowment growing rapidly, $100 million a year to the university as expenditures. More than 100, right? And so we're well on our path to achieve that. So we've already exceeded the goal of the campaign, which is $1.5 billion. The campaign's not over for another year and a half. And we're accelerating. So, Morgan, net position, what does this chart tell us? I hope you didn't turn it off, Stephanie.
So net position is basically the university's net assets. That's the latest term that we're supposed to use. And what this shows is at the same time that we've grown the institution and that we've really changed our business model, relying much more, as Dr. Crow indicated, on revenues that we generate and significantly less on state investment. You know, unfortunately to some extent, but that's the way it is, and so we've adjusted our business model. What this shows is that we've been able to grow our net assets at the same time we're doing all these things to realize our mission. That's important because we also are required to support a lot of our own capital investment. We typically do that
This is really, really, really important. Most people see this and they say, well, great, you can then make the university free.
So this is a system, you know, and our model is we have to make a lot of our own investments, capital investments, and so this allows us to have access to the capital markets and to keep our cost of capital relatively low. So in order for Ponch and his team to be able to grow research expenditures, we have to have the research infrastructure to support that, laboratories and equipment and those sorts of things.
Buildings that cost $1,000 a square foot, just to put that in there.
As we're growing as an institution, we need to make investments in living and learning communities for our students. All of those things as we scale for our students. Similarly, you might ask about online. We have to make investments in technology infrastructure. You know, our ability to do that is dependent upon the financial health of the institution. And
so what are some of our more recent technology investments?
One measure.
Sorry.
Well, you know, certainly
these are all self-financed because remember we have no capital budgeting. So we have become, again, the board is the university. The university is not of the state. It is the state. You have asked us to figure all of this out. We have figured it out to the extent that we can. So how do we self-finance our internal technology investments and talk about some of the scale of those?
Sure. So, you know, research technology, Biodesign C, we just recently opened, won a national award this year for the best higher education and research project. I think you've all seen that. We make a lot of investments in research infrastructure to support ASU Online. Everybody these days, depends on technology, mobile technology. The bandwidth is required to support that. Wireless, internet access, all of those types of things. And so at our scale, we have to make lots of those investments.
Those investments are often at the scale of a building. So we make technology investments in our platforms, in our software, in our systems, in the way that we run the institution that are in lieu of more buildings. See what I'm saying? So it's a different model. What can we use? How can a student use these systems to become more effective and more efficacious in their or we can expand the efficaciousness of their outcomes, but we need technology to do that. So
software licenses would be another example.
Like what's an example of a software license? They're all like just $10, right?
Well, we actually can negotiate some, pretty good pricing on a per seat basis, but when you're talking about I need, the ability to access 100,000 instances of a particular type of software, cost gets to pretty high.
Well,
so
like what? Like give me some examples.
Oh, Dropbox, Salesforce.
What do we pay Salesforce?
Canvas. Oh gosh, Salesforce, we're probably spending between $3.5 and $4 million a year.
What about Canvas?
Canvas, Mark, you might know better than I on that one. That's our learning management system.
Several million, but I can't remember.
Per year.
Multiple million. But what that allows us to do is, we have students who move around all the time. Pretty mobile population. Sometimes they're riding back and forth between campuses. Sometimes, they're doing a lot of personal activities. But to have that learning infrastructure available to them any time of the day, wherever they are, is what our goal is. And so being able to provide the resources that we need to do that, and a lot of the times that's the capital investment Dr. Crow talked about. So we've been able to increase our net position about 7% a year, even through the Great Recession and all the other stuff that we talk about on a regular basis in terms of responding to changes in public attitudes about higher education and pricing models and all that sort of thing. We still have to make these financial results work in order to realize the university's mission.
And having said that, even with all this progress, we're in the lower 50th percentile of the universities that we compete against in terms of our financial position. All the universities in Arizona are financially weak. Financially weak. All of them are very financially weak.
So the GASB is related to the pension liabilities. So I'm going to take that out of the equation.
Right.
The only thing that strikes me on this is that, the ASU component units, the invested capital assets, are fairly steady in terms of percentages of outlay. The unrestricted has gone down significantly. And is that in relation to the GASB rule, or is that just simply you now get restricted funds?
So there would be multiple parts to that answer. But it's actually a good question, and Joanne and I were talking about that a little bit earlier this morning.
Joanne Wamsley, who's the vice president behind.
Right behind me there, literally and figuratively. So a couple of things that I would point out there, Regent Manson, are that yes, those new accounting pronouncements, we all love them. They're very exciting. But what that basically is doing is it's reflecting on our financial statements what the accountants are arguing is sort of a truer picture, for users of our financial statements, of our financial circumstances. Absolutely no change in our economic status whatsoever, but now, bringing those onto our financial statements. And so that has significantly decreased the amounts that are on our financial statements, and particularly in terms of unrestricted portion of our net position there. There also, though, is a little bit of a factor that we essentially run an internal bank. So as Dr. Crow mentioned, oftentimes, we'll borrow money to cover the capital investment that's necessary, but sometimes
because we're one of 5 states with no capital investment in their universities.
Correct, and we know where student financial aid is, all those other things, but no whining. So what we do is we figure out ways to do that, and the internal bank allows us also to make essentially some cash investments in our capital infrastructure that we then amortize internally over time. And so we've made a number of those investments. That's often helpful to us, and we always sort of think about the different alternatives and the opportunity costs and the way we deploy our capital. And so sometimes we'll do those things. Right now, there are a couple of investments that we've made that are important to the university on a mission basis, and over time, we'll amortize those. And so you think about capital flows, it'll be moving from what you're seeing in invested in capital assets, which is the value of those capital assets, on our balance sheet. Some of that money, those dollars, will move back to unrestricted net assets as we amortize those.
It's use also, so that's what you're seeing. So we're doing very well against the stated Regents goals, moving out towards our 2025 goals. Most of our 2025 goals, with all things being equal, will be achieved. What are those goals? Well, so we take your 2025 goals and then we integrate them into the goal structure that we have. So the goals we negotiate with you, we integrate into this goal structure. This goal structure has been the same for over 15 years. These are the 4 things we're attempting to do as an outcome of the institution. Can we demonstrate academic excellence and accessibility can exist in the same institution? Can we have our programs be among the best in the country or the world? Can we become a global center for interdisciplinary research? Can we enhance our local impact? And so I'm not going to walk you through these.
President Crow?
Yes.
If I could ask you a question, please.
Yeah.
So if we look at those goals then, and a conversation that we've had about differentiated goals of the 3 universities, and as our enterprise university, what would be different about your goals than the ones that we see in that spider chart?
So accessibility, let me go back. So this goal says 32,000 graduates with a graduation rate greater than 85% from the full diversity. Look at the first 2. Maintain the fundamental principle of accessibility to all students qualified to study at a research university. That's shared by others. Maintain university accessibility to match Arizona's socioeconomic diversity with undifferentiated outcomes for success. That means we also have to grow with that diversity. So you may not ask all of the universities to grow at a faster rate than the population is growing to sort of play catch-up baseball. You've given us that assignment, so that's a differentiator. Unbelievable outcomes across that growth, that's a very significant differentiator. It's an entire so methodologically, our entire pedagogical model is different. It is technology underpinned at all levels, or you can't do any of these things. This is you of the Regents would know the most about this because of all your life experience. Enroll 100,000 online and distance education seeking students. That you can't give that goal to the other institutions because they may not have this as their purpose. Engage all learners at all levels. Back to this chart. And so these are differentiators in this space, I think. Scale, basically.
No, that's excellent, but that would describe the university and position the university in quite a different space.
Yes.
If we were to have those goals.
Yes, and then therefore the comparability between, so the universities we would be compared against then would be Purdue, Penn State, big scaled University of Maryland system. Those would be the kinds of institutions that we would be compared against. Establish national standing. You want all of the programs at your 3 universities to be outstanding. We have made substantial progress on this and are continuing to make substantial progress. All of our programs are going up in their standings and their qualifications. This is global center, so we tried to differentiate by taking an interdisciplinary focus. We didn't want to have the world's greatest chemistry department or physics department only. We want to have the world's greatest set of chemists working in chemistry and transdisciplinary research related to chemistry, and physics working in physics and transdisciplinary research related to physics, and social scientists working with those physicists, and humanists working with the engineers. So this is the differentiator. We decided to take a differentiated path from a traditional research university. And traditional is not pejorative here. It is what it is. It's if you were in the research business 100 years ago, this is not necessarily your angle. This is our angle at that scale. We now see a pathway to that scale.
Question, do you find that you pay a price with so many comparative rankings that are sort of historically bound to traditional vocabulary?
Absolutely.
And share sort of how you deal with that competitive dynamic to be more relevant on one hand, and yet want to be responsive to the comparative.
Yeah, well, I don't know fully how we deal with all of that. That's why we created the Office of the Chief Marketing Officer. That's why we created a marketing hub. That's why we're doing brand analysis, brand assessment. We're in the field doing focus groups, talking to families, talking to people because we have this complexity. And so, as I mentioned earlier to Regents, we believe that we've crossed a threshold and are now generally perceived to be one of the national research universities, whereas before we were not perceived to be. So the national research universities, Ohio State, Michigan, Michigan State, Penn State, UCLA, Texas, Texas A&M, Florida, Washington, Arizona, these are the schools that have historically been the big nationals, where a kid anywhere, when looking to go to a big public university, would say, oh, I'm going to look at those. We think we're on that list now. Any of the officers want to talk about that? Jim O or Jim R or anybody? No? All right. Yeah, so for us, we're all, Rich, you want to talk about that? Yeah, go ahead.
The only thing I would say is that
You guys are just as bad.
all I would say is that, okay, good.
Maria, you're in charge of that one now.
Is that the recruitment results that we have seen in the last cycle and in the cycle that's going on right now would indicate that there is a perception of the university that is different in the national market than it is. The numbers from California, the numbers from Washington of students who are applying to us and then accepting the offers of admission are rising, and I think
we have a 40% increase in out-of-state applications year to date, day over day. We have a 50% increase in filings of.
That is a very sophisticated market, and if they're making those choices, then there's a perception that has somehow changed. I can't explain exactly how it is, other than sort of accretion.
Punch.
Basically, if you look at the federal agencies these days, they emphasize a lot on solution-based, investments. And so if you look at NSF, the NSF director, Franz Cordova, uses us as, in fact, in our congressional testimony, uses us as a almost like the model of how the investments in NSF that actually have impact, and that the transdisciplinary way of doing things. So with these things then start to build up the brand. And as always, brand lags reality. So we are catching up very fast because our data also proves, as you saw, that we are doing really well. And so that's one of the other dimensions.
So the fourth goal, and I think Regent Penley, this is a differentiator also, is this enhance our local impact and social embeddedness, again, because we have the scale assignment, the social scale assignment. Meet the needs of 21st century learners through the Universal Learner Initiative by increasing individual success through these pathways and promoting adaptability to all accelerated socio-technical changes. Well, every university does this to some extent, but you're asking us to do it at scale, meaning without a limit. Okay, well, how do we do that? Well, that's what we're trying to figure out how to do. These are your assignments to us, and we project those out. We're gold. Our sister to the north is green, and blue is Arizona. We believe the bottom right quadrant is a misnomer, and it's a goal that we think the regions have to adjust at some point. And so the blue became flat, and shouldn't be. And it should be that the state's land-grant university with 2 medical schools and a veterinary school should be, like the others that are in that category are $1.2 billion, $1.5 billion. So if you want to look around the country at those schools with large medical schools, they're at, University of Washington. It's unbelievable. And so, what will it take? Well, one thing that it takes is we're not the green model, the gold model, the blue model. We're the red model. Not red for Ed, the red model. They captured red. Enterprise model, animating purpose, social transformation, and economic success. So Regent Penley, to your comment, that means then that we're measured against these things. Did we demonstrate economic and social progress as an outcome of the institution? It's not just the success of the individual student. So we have pieces of this, immersive instruction, enlightenment of the individual students. We have pieces of that. That's a necessary but insufficient outcome for our institution. So the University College Board I used to be on, Bowdoin College, that's about as green in that circle as you can possibly imagine. 1,600 students, over $1 billion endowment, a couple hundred faculty members sitting in this beautiful town in the southern coast of Maine, sitting in buildings that have been there for, 250 years, 200 years. That's a different model. Now we have some of the same stuff, some of the same culture, but that's not our culture. The assumptions of the faculty in that environment, it's a self-governing professionals. No one tells a professor at Bowdoin what to do with their space or how to schedule their classes or what room they can use. There's no scheduling office. We have centralized scheduling on 4 academic campuses. Even the space I think in Washington is that scheduled in Washington or scheduled here?
Well, it depends if it's academic space.
Yeah, right. But same thing would apply. So to get to where we're going, to hit our goals in FY25, we think we need $4.5 to $5 billion a year of revenue. So that means the team has got to find $2 more billion of revenue to hit those goals per year. Or the goals won't be hit because you're managing a university enterprise, us and the other 2 universities, which are not going to attain their goals based on public investment from the legislature, derivative of general things. You're going to build differentiated schools. That's what you've done. You've asked us to do this. So these dark here, this is state appropriations in our model. Now that does include our hope that the 50-50 model is funded. If the 50-50 model is funded, that's all it represents. We often get confused about the nature of the argument. We have built what some would think of would have been a political conservative's dream. A highly entrepreneurial, ultra-modern, technology-driven, highly successful, highly adaptive, comprehensive, merit-based university that funds itself. And all we need is help for the students from Arizona, because it turns out you cannot give this stuff away. There is no such thing as free. The use of the word free is a political gimmick. It is a political gimmick. There is nothing that's free. And so all these blue things, all this stuff going forward, we have to earn all that. Competing against others. Which is why you might sense every once in a while there's a elbow or 2 on the floor. Could have used a few more last night on one of the floors we were on. So we continue to evolve. Colleges at ASU, multiple ways that we're operating. Our DC center that you heard about yesterday, our evolving LA center. These things are all related to this success. How do you actually pull this off? You can sit in a regional capital, Phoenix, in an isolated area of the United States and pretend that you can make your university work based on a few shekels from a few taxpayers derivative of a political process, and that will net you nothing. Or you can build this. So that requires this, and why wouldn't you want this anyway? So these are our activities around the world and where we've got all kinds of things going on. Now, it's also going to require ultimately a differentiated design of the institution, back to the concept of design. So this is not where we are, but where we're headed, where we're de facto operating this modality, but this is where we're headed. So the heart of everything is the university itself and all of its assets, which will operate as an academic enterprise as you think of it. On campus, schools, students here, learning, differentiated, but an academic enterprise. A knowledge enterprise, which will operate as imagine that every asset of the university is in this gold circle. When we're an academic enterprise, all those assets are available to us as an academic enterprise. When we're operating as a knowledge enterprise, think of that as a global laboratory to solve problems. Every asset of the university is available. A learning enterprise is us online, universal learner, digital high school, all these other things, students that are not here with us, every asset. And then enterprise partners is not drawing from the assets, it's contributing to the assets. So through unique structures and designs and programs and initiatives, it is drawing resources into the core. So this is the structure that we are evolving to. Now, zooming in only on one of these, this one, what would that look like? So what's behind one of those circles? So why don't we do this? So Ponch should stand up. Cindy should stand up. Jimmy should stand up. Grace should stand up. Sue should stand up. Tamara should stand up. Who are your other officers? Those are all your principal officers?
I think Todd is actually in the groundbreaking for,
Yes. So this is Ponch and his team of senior officers, associate vice presidents, that level of the institution. Ponch,
yes.
why do you need so many people working with you? And so why do we have all these great executives that are a part of the university?
No, we talk about being an $815 million
And Cindy's over here behind
enterprise.
you guys.
Hi,
Yes.
Cindy. Maybe I'll introduce all of them.
Yes.
Dr. Cindy Sagers is the Vice President of Research, and very, very fortunate to hire her from Oregon State University. So Cindy manages all of what we will call as the foundation research projects in colleges, in units, and in our initiatives and institutes.
In a sense, not to diminish it at all, the standard vice president for a research job and all that's involved with that, the faculty, the interactions, the making sure that everything is working.
Exactly. It's a very, very
developing
important
new
thing.
initiatives and helping faculty to be successful, all of those things.
Very, very important thing, because at the end of the day, it's all about the core. If the core is strong, you can manifest the core in so many ways, as you saw in the previous diagram. And then you look at the strategy. The strategy is that we want it to be a much more diversified approach to anything that we do, building knowledge. And also that we are of service. We are service not only to our students and faculty and others inside the institution, but also that we are of service to the community. And the community broadly defined being, the region, the nation, and the globe.
So the rest of the team.
That's the team. So the rest of the team. So why don't we start with Tamara? So Tamara essentially manages everything in terms, she's Chief Operations Officer in the Office of Knowledge Enterprise Development. She manages all of the things that is involved in the knowledge enterprise, and you're going to see the other components soon. And Tamara, anything else that you want to add? Very easy job.
I'll just add, so just to be clear, 10,000 projects.
Yes.
Thousands of interactions, thousands of proposals being submitted, hundreds of contract negotiations, contract compliance, rule compliance, federal government interaction. It's unbelievable.
Absolutely.
The level of complexity, and Tamara and her crew manage all of this.
And the facilities. When we talk about the research facilities being utilized to the most optimal manner, Tamara and the team are constantly looking at how to reconfigure, how to configure. All of that is part of Tamara's operations. So she essentially manages all of the operational aspects of the Office of Knowledge Enterprise Development and does a fantastic job. A few years ago in the Regents presentation, we presented how, maybe this is a good testimony to this. So what we had when we had $800 million of proposals in terms of staff,
Yes.
and what we have at $2 billion, hardly any staff increase. We are constantly automating and keeping people only at the interfaces where people are required. So that's the kinds of things that Tamara does. Is it okay, Tamara? Yes. So the next item here is entrepreneurship and innovation. So that is led by Jimmy Choi, and Jimmy leads all our activities in entrepreneurship and innovation. I'm going to let Jimmy speak to that.
Across the whole country.
Sure. So we lead a team of people where we have resources to support student entrepreneurship, faculty entrepreneurship, as well as greater community entrepreneurship. So we have programs that are available to help grow ventures, help scale them for individuals as well as individual companies, as well as increasingly what we're seeing as a strategy working closely with cities. So we are involved in the development of the Mesa Innovation District. We're involved in the development of the Peoria Forward Plan. It's an economic development plan via entrepreneurship and innovation for the city of Peoria. And then recently, we've diversified nationally. We just won a multi-million-dollar project with the state of Rhode Island.
Yeah, we've had to go to other legislatures to get funding.
But it's really about helping to replicate this model of how we can draw upon the academic enterprise as well as the entire knowledge enterprise, hoping to create more of a culture, which is what they're looking for the state of Rhode Island.
Okay.
Thank you, Jimmy. And so all the aspects of entrepreneurship, entrepreneurialness, with these
You can see these different colors up here.
tens of thousands of students being exposed to the entrepreneurial mindset, I call them infecting them with entrepreneurialness. That might essentially express itself in so many forms all through their life. So that's all the thing that Jimmy works with the units and the colleges and so on, gets it done. Then, as I was saying, that we are responsible for the socio-economic cultural development. In the economic development terms, we are responsible for every corporate feeling that we are their partner, that we will do everything that the corporate needs. We are not going to sell what the university has, but we're going to find out from the corporate what they need. and that we will configure ourselves to all the corporates in every way possible to deliver what they need. Through that, we have been able to attract number of corporates moving to Arizona, moving to the innovation zones, as well as expanding their operations here. And I can give you stories of how we've prevented corporations leaving here because Silicon Valley said, well, you need to move to Silicon Valley to get talent and access to things. And we have defied that and shown that we can be a better place than even Silicon Valley. So Grace O'Sullivan leads all the corporate engagement activities for ASU. And she's going to talk about the strategies that we are using in corporate
10
engagement.
seconds, she's going to talk about that.
10 seconds. So we're ranking our partners and seeing where we should really be spending our time and growing and expanding our partnerships. So I think this is part of our global strategy where how we can position ourselves as a brand and a leader. So when companies like Starbucks or Adidas or Mayo Clinic want to work with us, that helps open up opportunities for our students as well. So we're excited to continue to grow those partnerships.
And Grace is really good at it. So thank you, Grace. And one more element that I want to talk about is we have said that oftentimes people think that when you don't have a medical school, you cannot do certain things. We have essentially defied that again, another way of looking at it. In fact, the lack of a medical school and the lack of an allegiance to a particular hospital system is in fact a great thing because
You can say that. It's an advantage.
Is an advantage, yes.
To
it's an
us.
advantage, and we become the Switzerland of everything. We work with PCH, we work with Phoenix Children's Hospital, we have got an agreement with them. We have joint centers with Banner.
But our problem was we didn't have a physician.
Yes, we didn't have a physician, yes. And then Dignity Health. So therefore, we went ahead and decided that we need a physician of the highest caliber. And so Dr. Sue Pepin is our leader for clinical health partnerships. She's a managing director.
Well, there's so much that goes on in health, and without a medical school, we are a hub for not just Maricopa County, but for Arizona. And so we're going to continue to build those partnerships with our clinical entities.
So Sue was the president of the Piper Charitable Trust. She was the associate dean at the Dartmouth School of Medicine long ago. When she was a younger person, she was a Rhodes Scholar in England, making the rest of us feel stupid, but that's all right.
So just in the last 2 years, we've been able to acquire for $40 million of new resources through this.
Right.
So it's all about resource acquisition.
Cindy, can you comment on, so you came from one of our conference peers, there you go, and can you just talk about the cultural difference? Not Oregon State's a great school, you're not commenting that it's not. I mean, what are the cultural differences to some of the regents? How are we different? So you were Associate Vice President for Research at Oregon State, and now you're Vice President for Research here. Are they just the same? It's just an interchangeable thing?
I was VP for Research at Oregon State.
Right.
And I have to say the missions of the two institutions are similar. But stepping onto ASU's campus was a bit shocking. The pace at which things are happening here, the aspirations, the energy, and the can-do attitude, it is just completely refreshing. This is the future of higher education in the United States, and I'm thrilled to be here.
Thank you, Cindy.
Can I finish with the last one?
Yes.
The economic development piece, I don't need a The economic development piece that we are working on is to use all our innovation campus for partnership. In fact, the leader of that is Todd Hardy, and he's doing the right thing because Benchmark Electronics is doing the groundbreaking with the governor today, and he's there representing us.
Right. Thank you, Punch. So this chart, now imagine going back one. Now, I'm not showing, we're not taking the time today to show you all of these. This one is under design. This one is deployed and will be redesigned. This one is deployed and is being designed as we move forward. This one is deployed and is being designed as we move forward. I'm just showing you down this window. So imagine a telescope. That right there is now you're looking down this window into each of the things. Now, I'm not going to walk you through this. I'm trying to give you a sense of what we ask our executives to manage in terms of complexity, because it's different than a company. It's not like, oh, you're producing this fantastic software product and you need to focus all of your energy to be able to do that. We don't have focus. You can't have focus when you're trying to advance new knowledge in things that don't even exist. What's the focus about what it takes to discover something that doesn't exist? See what I'm saying? It's not a standard industrial thing. So as you look down this, then, focal areas where I'm just trying to show you the logic here, not the details. Areas we might focus on, water for the future. We do focus on water for the future, green chemistry, solution projects that are deployed, areas where we've got large-scale activities, foundational projects, things that underpin things that we're doing. Remember, we have thousands and thousands and thousands of research projects. Then you keep going in deeper. So now we have institutes. So occasionally we'll hear from people like, why do you have all this stuff? Well, we have all this stuff because each of these then are related to some future aspect of our society, some future aspect of Arizona. Emerging transdisciplinary programs, smart cities, humanitarian logistics, health informatics. These are things that are evolving as we move forward. And so let me just say to the regents alone that you have allowed a monster to be created in the positive sense, not Godzilla and not Mothra, better than both. And so what I mean by monster is that a large-scale, adaptive, moving forward research university. Corporate interactions. This notion of the School of Engineering, as we now have evolved that becomes an asset. And this is something then that, just to give you some sense of how we're working, remember we have 5 Grand Challenge schools. You can see the number of enrollees in these schools, and the Polytechnic School, and a school that we're still in the middle of negotiating the complexity. I don't know where we are, Jim. It's Friday. And so on School 7, you don't have to give me the update in front of the regents, but but this is our effort to now do something with 2 other schools, 2 big international well-known colleges, University of New South Wales in Australia and King's College London, where a 7th School of Engineering that we will share as a joint kind of project may get off the ground. Now there is the dean of that, or the leader of that, was here just this week as she's moving things forward. So again, this notion of, I'm just walking you through this quickly now, Ed Plus at ASU, open scale courseware. This is going to be a transformational set of technologies that we are deploying. A pathway to admission for a kid that didn't do very well in high school or for whatever reason had poor circumstances. The notion of getting college algebra scale, and if this is everything that leads to college algebra, to every person in Arizona. Every person in Arizona. This notion of stackable credentials. How do you take this open scale courseware that we're evolving, and then you can end up with a pathway to an engineering degree by a little bit from here, and a little bit from here, and a little bit from here, and a little bit from there. The Universal Learning Initiative, part of that team is here. I thought I saw Luke Tate somewhere. Yeah, Luke Tate is one of the people leading that initiative, a native Phoenician who worked in the Obama administration, right in the Office of Domestic Policy for 8 years in the administration, brought that talent and that experience and that energy to us to help us make these things happen.
Mike?
Yes.
President Crow, can you pause just a second?
Yes.
You and I both know that lots of presidents talk about lifelong learners.
Yes.
You're a universal learner up
Yes.
there. How is ASU going to do that differently, and how is that going to infect both the majors and the general education at ASU?
So one, we have the global freshman. Well, first we have thousands of online courses. We're going to disaggregate those courses into all their subunit component parts. We're then going to allow them to be reaggregated, not all of every unit, but many of the units reaggregated into mechanisms that create learning modules for others. We're going to take the learning modules from others, not even our own. We're going to bring those in with their accreditation and so forth, match those all up. We're going to find ways to then link to these populations. So we have hundreds of thousands of people that have sampled our Global Freshman Academy from 195 countries already. We have 40,000 online degree-seeking students already. Luke, you want to give 2 sentences on this? There's a microphone somewhere. To Regent Penley's question, how are we going to make this work? And without naming the companies, you could maybe just give there.
Yeah, so we're
It's on.
got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're looking at a future of 10 to 47 million jobs being destroyed by AI-fueled automation in the next couple decades. And in Arizona, you have 1 million people who have gone to college. They have some college but haven't completed. Over 800,000 have completed at least 1 year. As those folks are having to adapt to their new role or needing to find a new attachment to the economy, we're going to be able to work directly with their corporations. We're actually in conversation right now with one of the largest, most important tech corporations across the country about how we can help those workers adapt before they get automated out of their jobs.
So part of the answer is we'll work with the corporations to help the employees to become more adaptable. Second is we'll work on a social scale, reaching out to people not only with our content but the content of others through partners. Third, we'll find ways to link with their job openings that occur with skill sets that they don't have, guiding them to the skill sets that they need to be able to apply for that job in as automated a way as possible, all drawing from our technology platform.
So in part, it's about disaggregating skills of individuals.
Yes, and disaggregating our own content. So our own
Yes.
content is too rigid. It's fine for a college student seeking a degree. It's not fine for a universal learner seeking an improvement to be able to make them better positioned for a job. Now, we have to do this, by the way, without adding additional burden to our faculty, because our faculty are already fully subscribed. So we have to do this in a way where the technology is the mediating force. The faculty are the creative force. By the way, occasionally we'll hear people say you have too many degrees. We're like, too many degrees? Are you kidding me? We don't have too many degrees. We have too few degrees. We have tens and tens and tens of thousands of students. We will ultimately have even more than that. We need as many learning environments that we can reasonably project for them. So this is the whole case of the state appropriation and the need for the 50-50 funding request. We just did a calculation. What is our net loss, Rich, on an annualized basis, approximately? Because, and this is if you take every dollar of state investment and every dollar of in-state tuition payments, you put it into a pot and you then apply it to our existing environment of what it costs us to do things, our net loss is.
Using the reported E&G cost per FTE as the basis for the cost of education, there are arguments about that. The number comes out somewhere between $225 and $240 million per year would be required to fully fund between tuition, net of financial aid, and state funding.
So, for those of you that have run businesses, if you have a product line that has a net loss position of $1 billion every 5 years, you got a problem. Particularly if it's your core customer, your core person, an in-state student that's generating that net loss. You have to then meet that loss no matter what, across any scale. This is what we need to fix that. And we're making, and by the way, here's another part of that argument, and we'll just end in a couple minutes. In 2006, that's what we were getting per student per year from the state. We have a completely different model. We don't want that. We don't want that model anymore. We want $7,775 per student. That's what we want. And the reaction we have right now is, well, that we can never fund that because we don't know how many students you're going to have. Okay, well, why don't you fund the ones we have? And then we can talk about the ones we might have later. Why don't we get to that? We're making no progress. There's no progress on this yet at the level that there might be. So that is the update. And then our plan now is to rest, right? Before we come back for questions.
I think there'll be a short file break, and food is available for everybody right outside. And then it's just a light lunch, and then bring it back for discussion with President.
Yes, so Regents, since we're in the land of innovation, entrepreneurship, efficiency, and effectiveness, we're going to take a 15-minute break in total. We will start promptly at 11:30. We're going to take questions in 4 20-minute segments. Those questions will cover the issues of enrollment strategy. Then we'll shift to revenue model, academic affairs and research, and finally with entrepreneurial spirit and Arizona's educational attainment. That's a lot of topics, so our questions are going to have to be succinct. I have to minimize my pontifications and make sure that I'm asking you questions so that we can get the maximum out of this.
Right.
Dr. Crow, this is an amazing presentation. I think we should take this on the road and make a lot of money. I'll take on the responsibility of scheduling and just a small cut.
So all we need, Regent Schroepman, all we need is $225 million a year.
That might be a little hard to get.
Yeah, I know, to break even for our in-state students. So.
All right, thank you. The food is over here.
Let's have the Regents go first, so you can.
Okay, Regents,
Regents
we'll go
first.
grab our food first, and we will start promptly at 11:30. Thank you so much, Dr. Crow. Very well done.